You were both back with us in February. It was the day that you two announced this plan to construct and operate a hydromet processing facility in Idaho. I know this stuff doesn't move at the speed of like software.
Yeah.
Can you give us an update on how that plan is going?
Yeah, so since then we've done a lot of work. We're doing a lot of the engineering work. Gary and I actually traveled to Bolivia together to go look at one completely operational plant, which was extremely useful for our team, his team as well. We're able to look at the best practices they're doing, and we're going to be deploying a lot of those best practices in the engineering work we're submitting for our own plan. So our intent is still follow through with this JV, have a fully domesticated line of antimony production here in the very near future that will last decades to come. And this isn't a flash in a pan where you go, this is going to be around for a couple quarters. Our intent is to have this new facility, state-of-the-art facility, that will be there for 4 or 5 decades at least minimum. So this is a big change here for the U.S., and we absolutely need this antimony. It's so desperately needed and required.
Gary, you know about this, right? You guys have the only North America antimony processing facilities, right? It's out in Montana. Tell us about what's going on here. And I am curious that since we've had President Trump really focus on critical minerals, rare earths, and so on and so forth, I mean, is the momentum continuing? Is the demand, tell us what's happening, because it feels like we talked about this nonstop for a long time. And now it feels like we moved on to AI and some different things. Where are we?
Well, obviously, with watching the Iranian situation, we're using up our military goods quite quickly.
Is that tapping supplies?
That's happening. So as the only antimony supplier to the U.S. government, we're a sole source contract, a $240 million contract. We see the purchase orders, and we're delivering now to the government. Just started in May, and our year revenues will be a hockey stick, because we just announced 2 days ago our new smelter in Thompson Falls, which the government helped fund.
Right.
$27 million worth. Is about a $40 million facility. That we started firing up furnaces in May. We have 5 running now. We'll have full capacity by the end of the month.
Which will be 9 furnaces?
9 furnaces, okay. Correct. And so we have an existing plant already, and now we have the new plant. We decided to not refurbish the old plant because we want to get as much production as possible. So we see the demand from the government, and we're trying to ramp up as quickly.
Have you gotten that $27 million fully?
Of that 27, we've received 12. There's milestones.
Okay.
Like every time these furnaces, that's a milestone. So we'll get the rest of it by the end of the year.
Why is it so hard to get a furnace fired up?
These are not off-the-shelf furnaces. We had to custom make them, and so there's parts, everything. There's this didn't work, this valve didn't work, so you're testing them over about a 3-day period.
Okay.
I guess what I'm wondering, though, in general, and Paul, I want you to come back in here. I mean, like I said, there has been so much focus. We were often going to the White House, the Oval Office, for the president to talk about how important it was. He went to China, talked to President Xi. Is there anything that has come out and changed since we last talked that has showed, still a priority, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that maybe we're not daily reporting on like we used to, but it's happening?
Yeah, there's certainly, even I can see the difference in reporting, no doubt about it. However, behind the scenes, it feels like a duck on water, right? The duck is real calm, but the feet are going 100 miles underneath the water. Think about our own JV. We have been working nonstop since the day we announced it. We announced that was that week we announced it, the day we were here on live.
Right.
So since that day, we've had a crew of around 8 people working nonstop, making sure we get this engineering. So there's certainly no lack of aggressiveness on our part, without doubt. There's like you hear Gary, the purchase orders are coming in. Like I hear him and I speak to him every week. It's like, oh, Paul, we've got to get this thing up and going. We need the supply. We got to be able to feed into this thing. There's a lot, and it's the antimony is obviously critical. But you think about the silver. You talk about these. We were talking earlier about these IPOs that are coming on.
Yeah.
My God, some of the biggest $1 trillion IPOs we've ever seen in our lifetime since the railroads began at the turn of the century here. These are massive IPOs. What do you think is going to power these things? The steel was the industrial revolution. Silver is going to be this new power revolution. There's no doubt silver is going to be required for the transformation we're going to need for all these AIs.
Well, Paul, then why is silver down 45% from January?
That's a good question. If I knew that one, man, I'd be a lot richer than I am today, no doubt. I can't answer that, but I can say this. Silver has, in my opinion, there's no doubt, everybody I've spoken to, every expert, every technical analyst, silver's found its bottom for sure, right? We've seen some silver price above 100. Silver's in its first innings here. Silver's still at a massive price, Tim. You know, you think about it. We're still very, very short on demand year after year after year. 5 years in a row, short on demand.
Would you say the same for gold? Down 25% from those highs at the end of January?
Very different.
When you were on with us in February, gold was a different.
Right.
It was 20% higher than it is now.
It was. Yeah, look, I've been a gold miner my whole life. I'm currently a silver. I know we're called America's Gold and Silver, but we're predominantly.
And you were
silver.
talking about all the gold that you were sitting on.
Yeah, when we don't. For America's Gold and Silver doesn't have a lot of gold. Just to refresh you, it's more silver.
Right.
We have silver, copper, antimony, and lead. All critical elements, the critical metals that we need in the industry. Gold, gold's far from done shining. People are trying to reposition. Everybody is trying to get into these new IPOs. You hear of funds. I've got funds that have been long-term shareholders for more than 10 years into us that are saying, we're repositioning. We're trying to get into these new AI, into this stuff. So it's not uncommon to see people having redemptions, going in and then buying something into this AI world.
Carol, you brought a great point about the government and where the government kind of stands on funding. Our company has today $245 million of government grant requests in, from antimony to hydromet to tungsten. Mm-hmm. And our joint venture has a $75 million government grant request in.
These
are requests, and these are grant requests where they basically, just like we got the $27 million, they're grant requests. We're still dealing with a bureaucracy. It moves slow. Deadlines were given to us in January by the Department of Energy. Were missed in April, in May, in June.
Why is that happening?
Good question.
If it's such a priority, can you pick up the phone and talk to the president or his team?
Well, we have on our board General Jack Keane, who you know, and he has definitely helped us in the past. I tried to not use that a lot.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of the last resort. But we're getting ready to have to shake the trees. And what he does, he goes and sees the Secretary of War. He goes and sees the head of the Pentagon, and they go, well, why hasn't this been approved? And the trees get shaken.
Right.
So it's the government has a lot of third-party contractors that are slow.
Well, I guess what I would just to follow is it's still a national priority. We've heard from the administration that it was about national security, right? You know, we've been talking a lot about energy security, and the U.S. is in a much better place than it was decades ago, but we see other countries struggling with that. But again, going back to national security, whatever you need, whether it's oil, whether it's critical minerals, supply chains, drugs, whatever it is it still, though, when it comes to rare earths or critical minerals,
I have no doubt it's still a high priority. It's just we're dealing with government bureaucracy. That's the only thing that I can see.
I thought we got rid of bureaucracy. I thought Elon took care of that.
Yeah, well, not exactly. Not exactly.
It's not moving as quickly as people would want. There's no doubt
but
about it.
But it prevents you guys from doing things, right?
It absolutely slows us down. Absolutely. I mean, the whole purpose of these grants are to speed things up.
Right.
And so we're waiting 6 months to a year for a grant that we've applied for that makes perfect sense, and still it's going through the wheels of motion.
The biggest one is that you think about Project Vault. We were both so excited about when you hear this reserve for critical metals. Your Project Vault's $12 billion. That's got to get deployed. Similar to we have oil and gas reserves. We're going to have this new Project Vault. That seems to be moving at a pace that's a little different than when it first came out.
Right.
We were all excited. We're like, okay, well,
your mood
how do
is
we
different.
tap into this thing?
Mm-hmm. You could feel it a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the government, federal government side of things is one part of this, but when you're actually in these communities and in different areas, there's also local challenges when it comes to the way people think environmentally about mining, the way they think about extraction.
Yeah, no doubt.
We ran into that in Alaska. We've had environmental groups with opposition. We've done a media campaign. We do meetings. We've hired lobbyists. We've hired PR firms. We do television commercials to try to educate, because the problem is the people that are negative on mining are looking at the old school, the old miners from 20, 30 years ago.
So what are they getting wrong?
What are they getting wrong is we're completely a new animal today. We take environment very, very seriously. We do things that other miners never would do. And we reclaim land sometimes the same month that we dig it up. I mean, it's not like 5 years from now, we do it in the same month.
Which means what? That you
it means that we leave
what?
that footprint where you can't tell we were there.
When we reclaim things many times today, they're even better than what we started with.
That's right.
But I do want to talk about state level, because you're not wrong. But it's not the same in every state. You go to Nevada, you go to Idaho. I'm in Idaho. We're welcomed in Idaho. It's very, very different. There's NGOs and that, but we have such a community. I've got 300 miners who work in day in, day out. I've got another 100. Since we've been on this show, I hired another 100 miners at Crescent. That's another 100 from the time I was here. And there is such an overwhelming amount of support from that industry. I've got hotel owners. I've got people who run car rentals business who go, thank God the mine is back on. This mine has been dead for 20 years. Thank God you guys are spending my hotels fill, my restaurants fill. I had somebody walk up to me because I'm CEO, was so happy to buy me dinner. I said, look, I don't want you to buy me dinner. I want to buy it, actually, and we're glad we're here. And thank you for supporting the mine. So Alaska is different. Idaho, I can say, look, you're not going to find a better state. It's a good place to be mining, and we're fully permitted at USAS, at America's Gold and Silver. That was one of the big advantages me and Gary had. Perfect. When him and I met, we had one tremendous advantage. We could move fast. We're both aggressive. We can get this thing done in this term limit of time frame. And I'm fully permitted. We're fully permitted.
Let me say something.
Yeah, please.
When we're done with this facility and with what we produce today, our combined companies will represent 50% of the U.S. demand for antimony.
That's big.
And this country was only getting it from China 2 years ago. Only.
And that's for a long time here. Remember, not a flash in the pan. This isn't a 100-meter dash.
Every time you guys say something, there's a million questions that come to mind. Well, and what's China doing right now? They're still moving.
China is now an importer. China used to be an exporter. They had the largest mine in the world called the Twinkle Star. Been around 120 years. Depleted in June of 24. When they put their embargo in September 24. Yeah. We compete with them every day when we buy antimony from the countries like Chad and Bolivia and Australia and Peru. And they're out there paying more money than we're willing to pay, and they import it to China and nothing comes back. They're using it themselves.
Look, we're in a unique position to actually really take advantage of that American-made brand. We really are. We're from anything, your cell phones, solar stuff, electric vehicles. We could be domestically producing silver, copper, antimony right in Idaho together as a group and providing it to Americans. That's a big change. That hasn't happened in that area for a very, very long time.
So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we have some midterms coming up in November.
Yeah.
So, without being political, but it's kind of how we kicked off our show at 2:00 Wall Street time, and we talked a little bit about some of the primary races. Is the clock ticking to some extent if you say that you've got these requests out there, but it's not happening, is there a little bit of a clock ticking for you guys?
Well,
Gary?
I mean, there's no question we saw a change within the administration from the Biden to the Trump. But I'll tell you, during the presidential Biden era, he implemented some things that help our industry. So I truly think it's more of a bipartisan situation. No question, though, that Trump has lit a fire. Trump has gone overboard in trying to get as much capital as possible to rejuvenate this industry. I think that will continue. I don't think it'll just all of a sudden if you have a Democratic president, it's going to change things.
Gary, I would imagine that the reporting around the U.S. magazine depth has also gotten people on board with the idea of making sure that weapons here in the U.S. are back to levels that they were before the war, at least sometime soon.
Well, the Department of War has represented to me that they have the lowest amount of inventory of antimony since World War II. And you can see what we've been doing with Venezuela and now Iran, and we got Ukraine, we got Israel. I mean, it's a big deal, and it's not just the United States. It's the NATO countries. It's Australia. Right. I mean, it's a worldwide problem.
Look,
it's fixable. We can fix it, and that's what we're trying to do.
There's no doubt we can't rely on everyone else to meet our needs. We have to be self-sufficient in the U.S., and we're in the right process of getting that done. Even when the moment I went in the White House, and Gary's got a lot more experience in the White House than I do. I am a true blue miner. But the one thing I heard very resonating was not only do we need 53 million pounds of antimony per year as a country, the U.S. alone, but we have to think about our allies. We can't ignore our allies. So when you think about munitions, ammunition, fire retardant, one of the biggest things for antimony is fire retardant. Do you think the fires in some of the states, like let's use California, are going to reduce next year? How often do we report those fires? Do we report them getting smaller, or we report them getting bigger? Well, by God, we need antimony for that. You don't have antimony for it. It's the biggest use. It's fire retardant. I'm producing it with him right now, today.
Listen,
so
we talked climate. We talked
get
climate just before you guys, and what's possibly coming our way in terms of extreme flooding and also dry patches, like in a big way, and fires. What?
And the antimony is so critical to this stuff. We talk about the war stuff and everything, and it's real. It's real, depleting that. But when I think about fires, I'm in Nevada, and they come so close every year, year after year. I'm like, my God, we need to make sure we have the supply of antimony on hand.